Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Positive Sports Report. I'm your host, Dana Smith. I'm a teacher and a coach at Carnegie Middle School, the middle school athletic director for San Juan Unified School District, and a certified trainer for Positive Coaching Alliance. In this episode, which is the first one available on YouTube, we have a discussion of our Coaching with Empathy workshop put on by Positive Coaching Alliance for our cross-country coaches. And we have an interview with Linda Flanagan, who wrote the book, Take Back the Game: How Money and Mania Are Ruining Kids' Sports and Why It's Important. So let's roll.
Hi, my name is Shania Manavan. I'm the cross country and track and field coach for Gold River Discovery Center, K through 8. And what I enjoy so much about coaching is watching the kids develop a new skill in practice and then apply it at a meet. It's really great to see that growth. And what we want to get out of coaching is really for the kids to develop a love of the sport and continue with it. And ultimately, we want them to develop good, healthy habits where they enjoy moving and continue to do it, because moving is a privilege, and like any other privilege, you have to take care of it. So just really enjoy seeing them grow, and hope that we're helping them build healthy habits that they'll keep their whole lives.
That soundbite was from one of our fantastic cross-country coaches out at Gold River Discovery Center. And it was done on September 8th at our Positive Coaching Alliance workshop on coaching with empathy. And that's a workshop that carries over to Positive Coaching Alliance from the merger with Coaching Core. We had a great trainer, one of my favorites, Mark Smidgen, and truly a mentor of mine who's worked with me on a lot of positive coaching stuff and workshops and how to do that properly. He's just fantastic and does a great job with our coaches. I got to participate and learn all these great things about coaching with empathy that our cross-country coaches learned about and that our wrestling coaches and our track and field coaches will get to do in the winter and in the spring. So when we talk about coaching with empathy, there are ways that coaches can model empathy to our athletes and to our parents and our community. And that's by seeing and hearing and listening to understand from an athlete's perspective, and then communicating that you understand or mirroring back to the athlete what you heard and saw using feeling words, and that we appreciate that connection that we've made and that reflection that we've made with that athlete. What it looks like to the athlete is it shows concern for others and that it celebrates teammates who are successful. They articulate what others might be feeling correctly, and they engage in active listening with eye contact, facing the person, asking questions. And they seek out others who need their support or their encouragement. And there are ways that we can do that. Some of the tips that Positive Coaching Alliance gave us, and Mark, who did the training, gave us, were that we can remind athletes to show gratitude to officials and to other teams, right? By those handshakes, telling them doing a good job, thanking them for being there as part of their growth process. We can show care and concern when athletes get injured and encourage them to do the same, even to the members of the opposite team, right? Show that we have concern and that we appreciate what they're going through in their own process and their own journey through athletics. Coaches can use the terms like be kind, understand what someone else is feeling, and that they should take care of their team and their teammates. And we can also show empathy is not an end goal. It's a process, and that we incorporate empathy into all facets of coaching. It's a part of what we do in the sport and out of the sport, that we show concern for others. We understand what they're feeling and what they're going through, and we encourage them as they go through that process. So I want to thank Positive Coaching Alliance for a great workshop, as always, and our cross-country coaches who let me participate with them and be part of their discussion. It was an amazing night, and I look forward to seeing all that we've learned in action as we start our cross-country season. I am very excited about our interview that we have for this episode. This is one of my favorite authors, and somebody's book that I recommend when I do trainings, or I'm talking to coaches, or I'm talking to parents involved in youth sports, and just a fantastic writer. So we are welcoming the author of Take Back the Game, Linda Flanagan. Linda, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, I'm very excited. One of the things I really love about your book, I love the way you take a story, a narrative of somebody's story, whether it's yours or your kids or athletes you've worked with, And then you kind of weave that into the research and the data that proves the point of that story. I just think it's really, really well done, and a way to pull people into what
Well, thank you.
reality and what we know through research is, instead
Yeah.
of just trying to tell it anecdotally.
Yeah.
All right, Linda is a freelance journalist, a researcher, and former cross country and track coach. She is the founding board member of Positive Coaching Alliance, and in 2020-21, advisory group member for Aspen Institute's Reimagining School Sports Initiative. Her writing on sports has appeared in The Atlantic, Runner's World, on NPR's site Mindshift, where she is a regular contributor. Previously, she was an analyst for the National Security Program at Harvard University. Linda is the mother of three, a lifelong runner, and lives in New Jersey. All right, Linda, you ready for your warm-up question?
I am. I'll do my best.
Okay, that's all we can ask, right? Who is your favorite hero of fiction?
You know, I bet my instinct says somebody like Atticus Finch, like here was this great hero from To Kill a Mockingbird. But I have a different one now because that's too easy. Unfortunately, I can't remember the character's name, but it doesn't really matter. It's a short book by Claire Keegan, and it's called, I wish I had it, I would Google it quickly. It's not Foster, it's the book she wrote before Foster, and it's about a man in Ireland who's very brave, who does something courageous for some women in his community, who are, kind of like the forgotten. This takes place, decades ago in a community in Ireland where unwed mothers were kind of shunned away, and he does a very brave thing. It's one of the best, most hopeful books, and it kills me that I can't remember the name of it. But Claire Keegan is the author. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. That's great. So youth sports have greatly changed since I was playing Little League and Pop Warner and high school sports. Like, I don't remember any parents at our practices. It was like we got dropped off and they hopefully picked us up when it was over with.
Yep.
And, the same 4 or 5 bats on a duffel bag, even at the high school level, that is
Yep.
completely changed. So I'd love for you to talk about how youth sports have been impacted by money and scholarships and how that's really become big business.
Yep. Well, yeah, was very enlightening for me when I started digging into this, how profitable youth sports are. And, basically individuals have figured out that there's a big appetite for kids sports and parents will pay up for it. And this started in the 70s, kind of, as what I've read, that's sort of the beginning of when a lot of things turned, when there was a recession and public funding for parks and programs that, maybe you would have gone to and I would have gone to, really declined. Parks are often considered like discretionary, and they're the first to get cut and the last to come back. In fact, after the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, spending on parks, local spending on parks was less than 2%. Wow. When you consider all the local spending, there's a lot, but they're not considered important. So in that void, people came forward to start offering private options or, other non-public options for kids sports. And part of that was there's demand, in part because Title IX as well had been passed. And in the 90s, when enforcement picked up, so a lot more girls going out for sports. And again, private individuals stepped up to fill that void. What really changed things was the building of the Wide World of Sports complex Disney built in 1997. That, this giant complex, and Disney took a big gamble on this. They thought, we need to get the teenage population because they are the ones who start losing interest in the Magic Kingdom. And they built this giant complex, and lo and behold, it was very attractive. There were a lot of AAU championships held at the Disney World of Sports complex. After 9/11, when there was a lot of decline in tourism and everyone was afraid, the Whitehall Sports Complex did just fine. And this, others took note of this, and, municipalities started realizing that if they built a sport complex, if you build it, they will come. And there are now 10 times the number of sports complexes around the country, and there are some 30,000 of them. So it's just become a giant industry. And I'm reluctant to say a number. In my book, I said 19 billion. And that research organization has since upped that number to 28 billion.
Wow.
I think we have to view them with these numbers with a little skepticism, but I do believe the Aspen Institute came out and said that annually parents spend 30 to 40 billion dollars on their kids' sports. So it's big. We all know that.
And that was I think from the book and being involved with sports for a long time, I think that was the part that struck me the most, that I wasn't aware of, the complexes and like cities building baseball complexes and soccer complexes, and that becomes a moneymaker for the city, with people coming and staying in hotels and paying for the tournaments. And that part really, that was an eye opener for me, that part of it.
Well, you don't think about it. If you're just going to these things, you're not thinking about it from the point of view of those who are building it and what's their purpose here. And look, they recognize that parents are going to spend on this. And it makes sense from their point of view that if you want to generate tax revenue, even for the city, it works a little bit, kind of like gambling works,
Right.
It may not be in the public interest, but it works.
Right. And this would be a whole nother conversation that concerns me a ton, of the kids and parents that can't afford that, and what's happening with that section of our society and their participation in sports. And a lot of times a group of kids that need it the most, need that belonging the most, need that activity the most. And like I said, that could be a whole nother big, long conversation on what happens, but that's a big concern to me for sure.
Well, let me just add one statistic about that. In 2020, the CDC reported that in households earning $100,000 or more, 70% of kids played sports to some degree. I'm not saying it's a lot, but to some degree. And in households earning $25,000 or less, 31% of kids did. So it is very much a class-based division here.
Right. And that's really, to me, as somebody involved with school sports, that's a huge argument for school sports, that we can provide something that those kids can't get somewhere else or can't afford to get somewhere else. So it's a huge argument for keeping youth sports going.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to parents a little bit here. In Second Goal parent workshops that I do for Positive Coaching Alliance, we do a 100-point exercise where parents assign values to the goals they have for their children in youth sports. It's interesting that we often see parents with this great intent of what they want their kids to get out of sports and what they'll put down on paper. But then we kind of see what happens to those goals and how they change rapidly in the heat of a season or as a career moves along. So what do you feel are some of the factors that bring parents from goals of life skills like teamwork, grit, work ethic, etc., to what often becomes a very self-centered participation and a win at all costs kind of ideal?
Well, isn't that that's like the main question, right? I mean, why we intellectually realize that this game really doesn't matter, it's not important, maybe their child is 6 or 7 years old, why do I care? And yet something visceral takes over. And I think part of this, the main reason, the big overarching reason, I think, is that adults, and that includes coaches and parents, have forgotten what sports are for and who they're for. That youth sports are actually for children and for their development, not to, make me feel good about what a good job I'm doing as a mother, or wearing my coaching hat. Wow, what a great coach I am. We just won. We just kind of, that gets lost in the hype around youth sports and the seriousness, the professionalization. Part of that is the more you're paying, the more you want out of it. It's those first things you mentioned on that 100-point, values list that parents said, do you want your kids to build character and teamwork and discipline, all these wonderful virtues. They're also very hard to measure, so they're just amorphous. Whereas look, there's the scoreboard. It's so clear. And I also felt this as a coach, that we used to have at the end of the season, our community would, our conference would have a coach of the year, would, for that, it was actually coach of the season for that particular sport. And it was invariably the winningest coach. It had nothing to do with these other qualities, because you can't really measure them, or they're at least hard to assess in the short term. So I think part of it is, that it's the way we've forgotten what sports are for. I think many sports parents are probably more competitive than your average, run-of-the-mill parent, because maybe they were athletes themselves and want their kids to be. I mean, of course, so many kids play sports. Not all of those children have parents who played, but I think you could find that probably the most competitive kids are the most have very competitive parents. And we also can't forget that we live in a capitalist society where it's a winner take all society. That's kind of the way we run. It's about who does things the best, and it's up or out. And it's hard to separate that out from this nice little domain at the playground or at the field where there's the scoreboard and your child's ready to hit. You want that child to hit, and you care that that they score and that your team wins, and it's worth it, and yay, we're on the right path. There's also these, and I go into this in the book some, which I also find so interesting, is like how our whole idea, our concepts of childhood have changed so much. It's not just that, like, your parents and my parents, they dropped us off and said, have fun, see you later, you hope you win, or whatever sport you're playing.
Right.
Of course, they cared about us and they wanted us to do well, but it just wasn't a fixation. But what's changed also goes back to the 70s with the recession. A lot of factors beginning then, changes in family life that have made children, they've moved, to quote Jennifer Senior, from our employees to our bosses. I always say that because it is such an apt phrase, where they have become this kind of the centerpiece of family life. It's no longer the parents' activities or even the families as a whole. It's each child's individual activities. And that's a big change. We have fewer kids now, so they're scarcer, so they're more precious. There's fear of stranger danger, which also started like 70s, 80s, when kids were abducted in very high profile cases. There's a lot of media attention on them. And, now with technology, you can surveil your child. There's this great sense of danger, and which is misplaced. I mean, not that terrible things can't happen. They do, and they're awful when they do, but they're also, they're also incredibly remote. But we operate as if, there's danger at every turn. And so therefore, have them in supervised play, put them in organized sports. And of course, we also know that athletes are celebrated figures in our society. I mean, it's so obvious, it, hardly is worth saying, because everybody loves the big sports star. And they're, I read somewhere that 82 of the top 100 broadcast TV shows had to do with the NFL. They're just hugely popular. So it stands to reason that if you have an athletic child, and you get some kind of ego gratification from them doing really well. So you want them to win. So it becomes about winning. It becomes about their success reflecting back on you in a way, to a greater degree. Obviously, parents always wanted their kids to succeed. It's just a matter of degree, and it's just become so distorted. So that winning and like doing well and publicly shining has taken on, it's just dwarfed the other kind of lesser virtues of sports, which is really what they're all about. And again,
right.
We've forgotten what sports are for and who they're for.
Right. And, and this comes from me listening to the book, and you were talking about kids being compared on social media, and that's the same for parents, right?
Yes.
They're being compared on social media, like what kid's game were they at? How did the kid do? Or you'll see a question in the comment, did they win?
Yes.
Not like, did they have fun?
Yes.
Did they learn
yes.
something?
Yes.
Stuff like that. And there's really changed and got us away from, like you're saying, the why are we doing this in the first place? And
Yes.
we're doing this to try to have kids be physically fit, get some
Yes.
exercise, learn to be great teammates, learn how to work hard,
Yeah.
focus on process. So I think
Yes.
all of that has changed greatly. And when we talk about scholarships, which you talk about a lot in the book, because it's
Yeah.
changed. The way scholarships have changed
Youth
how
sports.
we view sports, and the cost of college has changed
Yes.
that
Yes.
aspect too. What I try to tell parents is, okay, no one can tell you can't have that goal of your kid getting a scholarship, right? That's a great thing to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, let's focus on the process of getting that scholarship, because it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take some luck. First of all, the right person has to see you. You have to not get injured.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things have to come together. But no matter what, the end of that is, we still have learned grit and determination, and getting up out of bed early in the morning to go for a run, or whatever the case may be. We've learned those skills that will benefit us later in life, whether we get a scholarship or not. So
Yes.
if you focus on the process, those outcomes will come as naturally as they can.
Right. And the other, essential truth is that you can't make your child good. They have to
Right.
want it. So, all your parents obsessing about, well, they got to get a scholarship. I've got to open doors for them so that they get a scholarship. It's incredibly unlikely, first of all. And if it does happen, it's because the child wants it, really desperately wants it, and is going to do everything it takes. And even then, they might not get it. I mean, it might be a good time to go over some numbers about like scholarships. Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
So 6 to 7% of high school athletes play in college. High school athletes. 2% of high school athletes get any money, any kind of scholarship money. 15, and that's only in D1 and D2, mostly D1, which is the most competitive sport, competitive division. 15% of D1 athletes get full rides, full ride, the whole shebang. And that's mostly in football and basketball. So the idea that your, lacrosse playing son or daughter, or soccer playing son or daughter is going to get money, enough scholarship money, athletic scholarship money to offset all you've spent, is very unlikely. And which isn't to say they shouldn't play. It's about, what are you trying to get from it? And this is what I've always found so troubling. It's like, we've forgotten that sports are for development, and for, like, as you said, like learning discipline and teamwork and having fun and being active, and maybe it'll turn into something lucrative, financially remunerative down the road. But that, having that like outcome orientation is not helpful or wise in any way, in my view. Again,
No.
it's process, go through it, and it is their experience, which you cannot force.
Right. And I can see things pretty quickly when you can see a kid being pushed, whether
Yes.
does that kid want to be pushed? Do they not like being pushed? And those tend to be the kids that they don't fizzle out athletically, they fizzle out mentally. They kind of break, and that takes them away from the sport. And then we lose all those benefits that we could have gotten by just letting it be their thing,
Yes.
cheer them on, be proud of them, but
Yep.
let it be their thing, not a whole
Yes.
group of people's things, or parents' thing, so to speak.
Well, I just read a study, and I don't know when the study came out, so I can't be sure, but it's over more than 100 kids. So it was not a huge study, but of the 9, 10, 11-year-old kids playing ice hockey. And the kids were surveyed and the parents were surveyed about how much pressure was being put on them. So the kids were asked how much their parents did, and the parents asked how much they did. And you can imagine that the kids, it was like uniformly, the kids said, parents apply a lot of pressure, and parents were like, oh, I'm not doing much at all. So there's just this mismatch. And the kids who felt a lot of pressure did not enjoy the sport. They do not like it. And those are the kids who are going to leave the sport, or they're going to rebel. You can't force your child to love sport. You just can't. They have to come to it on their own. You can expose them to it, set them up so that they are welcome to participate and, learn the skills that might allow them to love it. But you can't make them love it.
Right. Because
You know,
sports are hard.
They
You know,
are.
that's just a fact. Going to practice every day for the little bit you compete, it's hard. So your heart has to be in it if you're going to be successful and you're going to enjoy it. And you know, at those same parent conferences, it ends with the slide that talks about the good old days.
Mm-hmm.
And I really emphasize, like, look, we had our good old days. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why we remember them fondly, because they were good old days. So
Mm-hmm.
let's make sure that what we're doing allows the kids we're working with now for that to be their good old days, that they look
Mm-hmm.
back on it fondly and not as this pressure experience. And I didn't accomplish what I was supposed to because I didn't get a D1 full ride.
Right. Right.
Well, you got to play college sports. Most people don't get to do that, you know, regardless of
Yes.
whether you're getting money for it or not. So
Yes.
just
Right.
really making sure that that's a positive experience for them.
Yes.
um,
Absolutely.
One of the outcomes you talk about is this idea of sports building character.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt like that's up here that, well, that depends, right? It depends on
Yes.
the situation. And um, you say at the end of that chapter about building character, to the extent that there's consensus on sports contribution to character, then it appears to be this: what kids glean from athletics depends entirely on a shifting and tangled array of variables: community values, parental attitudes towards sports, the coach's manner and methods, the child's own temperament and training, and the countless other intangibles determine what kids learn from athletics. Sports themselves are empty vessels, imbued with meanings we attach to them. So, what can you sports organizations do to make sure we're filling those vessels with those life lessons
Mm-hmm.
and those
Mm-hmm.
character values that we're hoping kids get out of sports?
Yeah. Well, I think the first is to recognize that they are empty vessels, that, just by playing a sport doesn't mean you're going to suddenly be, if you drop your kid off at a practice, it's not like they're going to come home with, suddenly they're better to their brother or sister, they're more happy to empty the dishwasher. It doesn't work that way. I think if organizations and parents understood that it really is dependent on the context. It can be kids can pick up terrible things in sports. There's all kinds of bad things in sports. So first of all, understand that there's no inherent virtue in it. I think also organizations, whether it's a league or a school team, they should be really explicit, clear themselves and with the kids about what they're trying to teach. Now, sometimes I've often felt that what you pick up from athletics, you don't necessarily understand it at the time. You kind of learn later.
Totally.
So even if somebody tells you, we're going to learn about discipline today, you don't necessarily, the importance of being on time. It doesn't have, it's not until later that you really appreciate that. But I think if at least coaches are conscious of what they're trying to do, and if leagues are clear, like this is what we want kids to learn. We want kids to learn that it's, showing up on time matters, that being there for their teammates matters, that practice outside of practice, like running around at home, unstructured practice matters too. If we want them to learn that, we need to be clear about that ourselves. And to be clear about it with the kids. And I hesitate to I don't mean to sound like an authority or the icon of coaching, because I sure did plenty of things wrong and things I wish I had done differently. But toward the end of my coaching career, I started asking kids, and I really wish I had done this earlier, is we sat around in this little circle. I mean, I was cross country, so it was a small group, which is easy. And I said, girls, I want you to think about what you've learned this season that could apply to the rest of your life. Like what, and it was good because it was at the end of the season. I think a week had passed, and it was so gratifying. And I also realized that sometimes they tell you what you want to hear. So I think you have to kind of set it up so that they could write it down, and they did. I had them write it down, and some of them volunteered. And they said things like, I'm stronger than I think I am. One said the importance of baby steps. I'm like, girls, this is exactly what you need to load. It worked here in cross country. It can work elsewhere. The baby steps are so important. Showing up. Yeah, but they'd learned it. And if you don't draw their attention to it, it also won't necessarily translate to the classroom or anywhere else. Like, I think we tend to think it does, but it's not necessarily so. It doesn't doesn't hurt to like elevate it, to have a discussion about it.
Yeah. My wrestlers, we journal every week, and it's simple journaling process, but I like them to take some time to do that. And one of the questions every week is, what is something you're grateful for or you're thankful for? And I love when they write down things like, my parents, because they come and pick me up from practice, or they get me
That's
to
great.
competition. Just those, pointing out those little things, like other people are helping you out, and you have a lot of things in life to be thankful for, no matter what the immediate situation is.
Yeah.
But you're right, you have to point it out to them. You have to get them to think about it a little bit, and that's where we get down to those life skills and those character traits that we're looking for. But it has to be purposeful. It has to
Yes.
be something that you have a plan, just like you have a practice plan or the technique you're going to teach. You better have a plan that you're going to get those other life skills across as well. And that's, like you said, when we see that as coaches, it's one of the things we're grateful for, right? We
Yes.
get to
Right.
see them come back with the things that we were looking to do.
Well, there's also, and if I could just add, I think that
For sure.
it's the coach you as a coach, you have to like embody what you're trying to teach. You can't like lecture kids about bullying and then be a complete jackass. You can't tell them they have to be on time, bus leaves on time, and then you stroll in late. This is not, it's probably the most important thing a coach teaches, in my view, is what kind of person are they? What kind of person are you as a coach? If you dismiss kids who aren't any good, or you don't put any time in, or you don't notice them, you don't know their names, all the lessons about character and integrity will mean nothing. It's how you behave as a coach that makes such a difference. And we're all going to make mistakes, but I think kids know if you really care about them. If you're doing it to check a box, or if you actually care about them as people and not just about, their performance, that you care about them, you want to see them improve and do well, and that that's why you're doing it.
Right. And I think when this idea too, when you do make mistakes, that you admit it to kids. I blew it.
Yes.
This is what I should have done. I didn't handle it that way, and that's teaching those life lessons as well. But you have to. They notice everything you do. You
Yes.
are an authority figure to them, an expert in something. They
Yes.
notice everything that you do, and they will pick that up.
Yes.
So you have to be very, very attentive to the way you're handling yourself. Like you said, you can't be a hypocrite.
No.
If
Well,
you want them on time, you better walk through the door. You better be there when they get there, and you better be
yes.
ready to go.
Yes. Well, and I used to always tell my girls that sometimes when we would have we'd have like big meetings, I'm sure you do this as well, after like a loss, a disappointment, something that didn't go the way we wanted it to. And I would always tell them, as unhappy as I was, like, look, don't ever let a coach tell you, scream at you and get mad at you for losing, because if you're the coach, you're the one in charge of that team. So maybe you did something wrong. Maybe I didn't. Maybe we lost that meet because you died on the hills because I didn't prescribe enough hill training. Maybe I didn't do enough. I focused on the wrong thing in practice. Like, kids should never bear the burden of a loss. The coach has a lot of responsibility. And by the way, it's okay to lose, but the idea that it's all their fault, I really think it's important that kids know that is just, that's baloney. You bear, and I think
Exactly.
coaches scream actually because they're embarrassed, but
right. And I think they want people that are watching, they think the screaming means that they care and they're doing the best they can. It's and I did plenty of, not screaming at kids necessarily, but plenty of my own yelling and screaming when I was a young coach. And I know, like, especially with officials, and I had that feeling like I need to show that I care about my kids. I need to defend my kids. And I was teaching them something horrible by doing that. I'm telling them to treat people with respect. And here I am yelling at some poor guy that's making $30 for refing a match.
I know.
So,
but that's the that's the norm. So you feel like, oh, I guess I better do this. And some of those norms really have to change.
Yeah, absolutely. When we finished our season last year, we have a district championship, and we're really competitive with the school. It's like right down the street from us. Our campuses literally look exactly the same. Just like ours runs uphill and theirs runs downhill, but they look the same. All the kids are friends, coaches are friends. And they won the district championship, and we came in second. And my kids were really upset. They're in tears. They're sitting in the stands really upset. I said, I'm really proud of you. You went, did anybody here not do the best they could today? You know, then they're kind of looking at me and it's like, you gave us everything you had as a good teammate. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go over there and shake their hands and congratulate them. And it was like the best moment of the season. And it was just off the cuff for me because I could see they were hurting and it made a huge difference for them. And then for the other team as well, that we're going to respect opponents, honor what they brought out in us that day to try to beat them. But just showing those kinds of things and showing kids it's okay. You know, you came in second. You worked your tail off all year long, you know. I wrote this down on my notes this morning as I was getting ready for school. I was listening to the part where you're talking about Allie Carter. And it's I've listened to it a few times, and every time I listen to it, it chokes me up. Just what she went through in a season and what her teammates did for her. And that part of sports that's way beyond a stopwatch and a place, and just that she had that support from a team. And it's just one of those stories I was saying that you tell and you weave into the book that they just suck you right into what sports is supposed to be about. And some of them, when we do it wrong, the damage that it can do. But I just wanted to share with you that I really appreciated that story and what happened with that.
Thank you. She's doing great, by the way.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, if you talk to her, tell her I'm a big fan.
I will.
Of what her story was. It was great. Linda, I really appreciate you coming on. This was, I've been talking about this for weeks with people at school and at I sat in on the cross country workshop for PCA last week, and I was just really excited. And I can't recommend your book enough to people when I'm out at workshops. It's Joe Ehrmann's Inside Out Coaching and Take Back the Game, or the books that I recommend. So you're living in high company there. I don't know. My company is not super high, but the books I recommend are very good ones, and yours is definitely one of those. So I really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
You know, we could talk for hours and hours.
I'm sure we could.
Yeah. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
A big thank you to the author of Take Back the Game, Linda Flanagan, for joining us on this episode. I'm a huge fan. Her book is a must read for anyone involved with youth sports. So I was very excited to have her on. It was truly an honor to get to talk to her. So again, a big thank you to Linda. This month's shout out goes to Jennifer Page Rogers, a former Carnegie and Bella Vista wrestler. In September, Jennifer earned the opportunity to go to Serbia and wrestle for the United States wrestling team at the World Championships. She beat the #1 seed from Japan at the championships and came home with a bronze medal. Just an outstanding job. Jennifer is a great wrestler, obviously, but she's even a better person, and her perseverance in her career brought her to this moment where she got that well-deserved honor of being a bronze medalist at the World Championships. You can hear Jennifer's story in our February episode from the past school year. She was on with us, and I really recommend you hearing what she's gone through and what she's been able to do leading up to that bronze medal in Serbia. Our cross-country season has begun, so make sure you get out there and cheer on our athletes from our middle schools and K-8s who are participating in cross-country. The Positive Sports Report is supported by the Performance Connection. Unlock the full potential of your youth and high school sports organization with positive coaching and mental preparation. Learn how to build an organization based on core values, how to stay focused, positive, and motivated with help from the Performance Connection. See the services available from the Performance Connection at theperformanceconnection.com. Please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast server and now on YouTube as well. Follow us on Instagram at the Positive Sports Report. Until next time, let's keep our sports positive.